Good morning, everyone, and what a fabulous morning it's been so far in terms of those sessions. So we hope we're going to follow on that discussion around digital transformation and, importantly, the heart of that, collaboration. It gives me great pleasure today to chair this panel session. But before I ask our panelists to introduce themselves, I would just like to set the context for the work we've been doing at JISC over the past 2 years. Our panel today, you're going to hear a range of institutions talking about their approaches to digital transformation and some of the challenges that they are overcoming. But this is set in the context of this wider piece of work that we've been doing. And I'd like to now share some of our senior leadership voices who have been supporting and championing the work you're going to be hearing about today.
I believe we are at a profound point of technology-driven disruption, and higher education and universities are going to need to respond to it.
Our students are changing, the world is changing, the world is more digital, and if we aren't preparing them for this world of interconnectivity, then we are not doing a good job as a higher education institution.
Part of our duty as educators is not just to teach students the right things, it's also to teach them to use the right tools from an employability perspective as well. So it's not just content, it's also about delivery.
Universities quite often can be quite traditional in their approach, and actually being able to embrace digital transformation, that's something that's really important for the future within the sector.
When we say digital transformation, it can mean so many different things to people, depending on their role, depending on their context, depending on the type of university that they work in. But most importantly, we wanted to try and broaden our sector's understanding of digital transformation and really bring it back to being around people, around really supporting staff, researchers, leaders, students to think about the ways that digital can enhance what they do, and at the end of the day, create that exceptional experience for all students.
We're operating inside an environment that is fast changing, that is uncertain, and we knew there was a whole set of activities that we needed to get on with around supporting our staff, supporting our learners. It's important for us to adopt a framework that gave us an opportunity to look at a wide range of different areas and for us to ask the question, have we thought about that?
I think one of the benefits of the JISC framework is that it has been developed with the sector. It was iterative over time and you could see it growing, and I think just the extent of it does represent where most higher education institutions in the UK are in terms of the sorts of things that they're thinking about.
So the number one challenge with getting a successful digital transformation is almost to forget the word digital and think about culture and people. And our framework, I think, really highlights that. It talks about technology very little. It talks about people, process, culture, skills, capabilities, and leadership. Those are the important things that organisations need to focus on.
Often in universities, we can have a siloed mentality, and the language of education doesn't always speak to the language of digital services or administration. Using the JISC framework has allowed us to create a shared language and shared understanding across the university.
It is very person-centric and it does think about values and behaviours.
And it provides a balanced view across all of the different areas where we're going to have to advance digital transformation.
Within a university context, I think it's incredibly important that we show that the things that we are designing and developing have got credibility from trusted partners. And that's something that JISC has brought to us.
Universities are key at providing the skills for the next generation. So if they are providing those students with those skills, capabilities, approaches to technology, which their students have seen modelled and used at their institutions. They've been given the skills to confidently use technologies like artificial intelligence and the whole other gamut of things that are coming out. I think that will have a very positive impact on the UK more widely.
The choice is not about the pace of digital transformation. That pace is set for us externally. The choice is whether we respond to it and are able to sustain higher education as we understand it or not.
So there we've heard from our senior leaders around some of the challenges, but also the approaches that they're taking within their institution. And we're going to hear more from our panelists shortly on that. You heard reference to our framework for digital transformation, and we've been working with institutions to embed that along with our maturity model as a way of taking forward the wide range of activities that digital affects within a university. Our framework there has given prominence. It was lovely to hear Tracy in her session earlier relate to digital mindset and digital culture. And of course, that underpins successful transformation. It is about people, as we've heard in that short video. So we have been working with 24 pilots across the sector over the past year and a half to use those materials to support and underpin the developments that they were taking forward. Whether that be in developing a new digital strategy, whether it be reviewing a digital strategy, whether it be around assessing and benchmarking and baselining where they are as an organisation in relation to their digital maturity across all aspects of the organisation. So I'm really looking forward now to hearing more from our panellists who have been contributing to this work and working closely with us. All the information that we've shared is available from the QR code there, which takes you through to report case studies and further video case studies of executive leaders sharing their approaches. So I'm going to now ask our panellists to introduce themselves, and I'll start with Rachel to give a short introduction around their role, responsibilities they have for digital transformation.
Thank you, Sarah. Morning, everybody. I'm Rachel Johnson-Duval. I'm the CIO at Bath Spa University, and I've always had a hand in digital transformation, but to a greater or lesser extent from the visibility perspective. So I've just taken on the chair of our digital oversight group, so that visibility of IT is now first and foremost, but it wasn't always the case, so perhaps a little bit more on that in a minute.
Thank you, Rachel. Martin, can I hand over to you?
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Martin Whiteside. I'm the Pro-Vice Chancellor for Digital Transformation at the University of Worcester, and that role takes on the role of the CIO, actually the DPO element, but also that kind of wider approach to how do we reach out to people, find those communities that are doing good digital work, and try and support them, trying to help them do more and also connect in ways where we might have become a little bit more siloed. So it's really not about that kind of, obviously, line management of digital, because that's really not possible anymore. It's really about connecting people across the institution, looking at the skills they've got and how they can help each other.
Thank you, Martin. And lovely, you've already mentioned that collaboration and that holistic approach. Paul.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. So my name is Paul Sinnott. I'm the Interim Director of Information Services at the University of Kent. That's a new role that I've taken up, but I've been involved with digital and technology at the university for just under 20 years now, so seen a huge amount of change. And I think one of the pieces of work that we've done with JISC is really trying to assess our maturity in terms of digital. We're an organisation that has been very devolved in our model in terms of delivering digital, and that's now moving to a more centralised, more strategic approach. Equally, at the same time, as I'm sure many are finding funding challenges and challenges around resource. So it's about trying to take that those first steps in re-evaluating what the future looks like for Kent.
Thank you, Paul, and we're going to touch back on some of those challenges shortly. Baba.
Hi everyone, I'm Baba Shiba. I'm a professor of digital education and transformation, but I'm also the director of digital transformation at City St. George's. You would most likely be aware, two separate institutions merged last year, so we're right in the middle of sort of integration between the two areas at the moment. And I've just recently set up a new office for digital innovation and transformation. And the role of the office is to basically get all areas of the institution working together to sort of deliver our shared vision for transformation.
Thank you, Baba. That's a really good place to start because some of those recommendations came out of the pilot that you worked with us on. So could you say a little bit more about the work that you've done using the materials, the maturity model and the framework, but also importantly how that is really then taking forward the approach for digital transformation at City St George's?
Thank you. So one of the work that we engage JISC on is to actually understand where we were as an institution. Now that was started by the legacy city side, and the outcome of that allowed us to really understand exactly where on the maturity model we currently sort of sit. And I think sort of we found that the majority of the institution was still in the emerging to establish phase, but we had pockets of areas where we're beginning to see a more sort of matured phase, particularly in the established to advanced area. But also, about a couple of years ago, we realized the need to start a major transformation work, particularly on the foundational work. And the speaker earlier spoke to sort of the foundations that you need in order to properly build that property. So those IT foundation projects, which we call the Big Six, have been in motion for the last 2 years or so. And that, alongside the work which is particularly on the digital transformation framework and the organizational digital culture maturity model in particular, had helped us to realize that as an institution, we actually need a shared vision and guiding principles for what digital transformation means for us. But the fact that two institutions were merging to become one also really made that a necessary thing to do. So we've been able to use the recommendations that came out of that, things like having a shared vision, things like embracing the cultural aspect and actually creating a vehicle to help steer that. And I think the establishment of the Office for Digital Transformation, the sort of work that we're now embarking on has been an outcome of the framework.
Thank you, Baba. And you mentioned, I think that sort of common theme that we're going to hear about that shared understanding around language, that shared vision, which is so important. And that segues nicely, Rachel, into the work that you've been doing at Bar Spa. Could you say a little bit more about how you're taking forward digital transformation?
Yes, certainly. So we've been at this now for about 4 years, and the work that we initially started with was around resilience, it was around cybersecurity, and some big piece items such as a migration from Google to 365. So that was a significant piece of work, and it taught us a lot about the need for a really good organisational change management team. So we were feeling quite pleased with ourselves, but we knew that there was a lot more that needed to be done. And around this time, we had the publication of the JISC pilot for the Digital Transformation Framework. So I was really excited about this, and for that reason decided to dive into it full bore, as it were, because we really wanted to use the full breadth of the maturity framework to help us understand our maturity as an organisation and also those areas for development as well. So it presented for us a really great opportunity to go out and talk to the business, talk to our senior stakeholders, because I didn't want it to be me and a colleague sat in a dark room thinking about the level of maturity that we had. It needed to be that shared understanding. So that's the work that we did. It was a great opportunity to understand where we are as an institution, to have those conversations, and also to really have that external validation, if you like, about areas of strength for us and also those areas for development. So those are the areas that we've been focusing on since then.
Thank you, Rachel. And we'll come back to those areas of development in a moment. Martin, from the University of Worcester's perspective, do you want to share a little bit around the work that you have been doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we already knew that we had areas where we had strengths. We knew that there were people out there who were doing very good work, but that wasn't consistent across the board. And we didn't really have a way to really understand what was happening out in the schools, how advanced we were. We didn't have very good visibility of that. And I think the work we did with JISC was very, very valuable in exposing to us those people who were running ahead, doing really good work, but also those who were a little bit more hesitant, who didn't feel that they were either empowered to do it, didn't feel they were able to do it, or didn't know how to. And I think the maturity model, the work that we did with JISC, it just gave us the visibility that we were lacking. We're a relatively small university, but we're still quite complicated, and there's still a lot that it's very, very difficult to understand about what's happening in those lectures, what's happening in terms of digital teaching, and being able to bring people together. So we had about 400 of our staff. It's not a huge number, but it was a good number of staff engaged with it. They gave us some really good feedback. We then did the sessions out there with people, workshopping with all of the schools, all of the professional services departments, workshopping where we felt our capabilities were, where our weaknesses were. And I think that really gave us the really good foundations to then work out who was a digital leader, how we could connect those together, which is really where my role has come from then, is bringing those people together and understanding what it is we do well, celebrate it, and then find the people who need that little bit more support and how we can work with them to bring everyone to a similar level. And I think the maturity model, the work with JISC was very, very valuable, I think, in that understanding and then upskilling. And the terminology in it, I think, is very good as well, and it's very helpful for staff. They don't get turned off by that. Sometimes digital really excites people, sometimes it intimidates people, sometimes they see it as being very IT focused, and they think, well, that's not my job. My job's to be out there doing innovative teaching and collaborating and all those things which are digital, obviously. And I think the terminology that's used in the framework, I think a lot of work went into that to make it something everybody could buy into, I think, and understand.
Thank you, Martin. I think one of the things, having been in some of the workshops with your staff, it was just opening up those conversations, wasn't it? And giving staff that time to hear what other areas were doing and to realise that they had a role in supporting. It doesn't all rest on your shoulders with the digital title.
Yes. Absolutely, and I think that's really key, is that digital's not, and we all know that, but digital's not owned by an IT department or the head of something. Somebody, I think one of the videos said digital's sometimes not a great phrase, because what we're interested in are good ideas. We want people to have good ideas, and then how do we use that as a catalyst to do more? And we don't have a department of good ideas or a director of good ideas. They're just things that happen naturally in all of our day-to-day jobs, and I think it's just been really valuable in connecting all of those people who are saying, I could do this, or I've seen that, in a way that we weren't doing before. And as I say, we're relatively small, but we're still quite complicated, and that landscape in the institutions can be quite difficult sometimes to bring everyone together.
So Paul, from your perspective at Kent, what are some of the projects and initiatives that you're now taking forward to move that agenda forward?
So I think for Kent, it's a period of change. So we're working with stakeholders to understand kind of where we are right now. What sort of elements of good practice are there? Where do we need to kind of improve? I think the work with JISC has been great in that what we've done is we've reached out and we've had those sessions with colleagues to kind of really bring them into the conversation, to make them feel as though, especially during a period of centralisation, that this isn't us taking away control. It's about us trying to come up with a more holistic strategy around digital. I think I've used the term whack-a-mole before, where we've seen projects and initiatives just appear across the organisation, fantastic within their own right, but perhaps not considering the broader context. And so I think where we have implemented pieces of work, it's been about how can we do that collaboratively, how can we work with colleagues, and I think by opening that conversation up through the original work with JISC, through those interviews that we did with a number of people, it's allowed that buy-in, and certainly given that degree of momentum for us to continue that conversation and really start to look at the really positive behaviours that we see and the areas where I think we can bring that together. All why we're struggling to understand what our resource position will be and how we do deliver that in a changing environment.
And I think that's sort of a really interesting point there in terms of you know, that link through to, again, bringing people together, having that shared understanding, but you know, also having that sort of clear enablement of sort of prioritisation, because there are so many initiatives, and it is that how do we focus? What are those key areas that we need to be investing in? As we've been hearing. I was also interested, you touched on that point around sort of internal collaboration, because I think that's been a theme of what we've been hearing across the conference. And if we want to collaborate at a sector level, we also need to be ensuring we're collaborating across our own institutions as well, and how we can break down some of those internal barriers to collaboration.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important. It's important for us to be able to work with those colleagues that are actively engaging in transformation. And in many ways, you know, we're always transforming. The piece of work that we're trying to do is to bring that together into a holistic strategy. But work, you know, but understand that there is good transformation already taking place, and trying to pull that together into something more strategic and more focused, with us to be with the ability to be able to prioritise our resources, prioritise our people at a time when we're obviously wrestling with what that will look like as we move into the future.
Well, we've touched there on you know, challenges, and I'd like to sort of start perhaps with you, Baba, in terms of thinking about, you know, we've heard quite a lot of discussion over the past two days around the different challenges that institutions are facing. But for you at City St George's, obviously going through the merger, what do you see as sort of the key challenge that you are facing at the moment at City St George's?
I mean, I'm a positive person, so I usually don't see challenges. I just see opportunities. But you are right. We are in the middle of a merger integration, so that, in a way, is a challenge in its own right. But I think what is also unlocked is the opportunity for folks across the organization to be energized about this idea of what the future can be. And being able to tap into that energy has been really sort of helpful for us. I guess the first barrier that we've been able to overcome really quickly is to get that senior leadership buy-in. You know, you've seen Anthony Finkelstein on the sort of video earlier. He's somebody that gets this whole thing about digital transformation. So from a personal point of view, I feel very lucky that, you know, it's less of a sort of sell to do. But also, we're an institution with multiple schools, and each school is quite, you know, sort of unique in their own ways. And being able to engage with the senior leadership of each school to get to a point where we now have a unified view around the vision where we want to be and the guiding principles. And then we're just fine-tuning the sort of priorities of what we want to commit to. And we have a few that are already in motion, of course. But I think the biggest challenge that probably remains at the moment is how we translate the sort of energy and enthusiasm into real sort of action to get people on the ground involved. So, and that's a challenge, and that's something we need to sort of find a way to navigate through. We need time for folks to engage with the sort of initiatives. But there's a competition for time, partly because of the merger, partly because of BAU priorities, and so on. But one really good thing that we've established now is a clear digital partnership that brings colleagues in sort of multiple areas together to really have a clear way in which we can push forward with those ideas.
And a lot of learning as well, I think, that we can gather from, obviously, you going through this process as well, however painful it may be. But we'll definitely keep an eye on that. Rachel, coming to you in terms of the challenges that you're currently facing.
I think our biggest challenge, and I think a lot of people here would recognise this as well, is trying to manage expectations around AI at the same time as developing the guardrails and the governance around that as well. And it could be relatively easy for the whole concept and benefits of digital transformation to be eclipsed by AI. But it's also a benefit as well, we found, because if we start to think about, okay, what are the anchors for change? What are the things that we really need to change to move us forward, which aren't particularly captivating in the sense of things like data quality and process improvements and so on. But the very fact that AI is there in the sky as a bauble is actually quite helpful for us to start to help people to understand that these things are really necessary in order to drive us forward.
It's a good driver to enable that conversation, or that hook, isn't it,
Yeah.
to engage. And Martin, from your side, what?
Challenges we have. Obviously, all of us are kind of resource constrained. We have a number of things that we need to do. You mentioned before the whack-a-mole approach of lots of new things coming up, which might pull us away from that strategy. One of the things we also struggle with, which we probably don't discuss enough, is not just the technical debt and the legacy that we have, because we all know that we've got these legacy applications, things we need to deal with. But there's also, within that, a need, not just for maintenance, but these contracts and systems that come up. So De Montfort earlier on, I think, said they've got 700 systems. We often talk about having 100 at our university. And if those systems come up on sort of a 5-year cycle, we've almost got 20 things we need to do every year before we get to digital transformation. And some of those aren't things that are burning platforms. Sure, we might have one that is, but I think we need to be very, very firm with our digital strategy around what it is we're trying to achieve, and not be driven by some of these legacy applications that we sometimes find ourselves repeating work that we've already done. So what I really want to get away from is talking about these systems towards talking about knowledge, talking about the digital transformation, how we use things. But it is a challenge for us that we have a lot of applications and a lot of systems and a lot of processes. And as we go back through those, they are quite heavy when we're trying to move in a very agile way.
Now, I think our session is being slightly reduced because of the timings, but I would just like to ask each of the panelists to say, in your roles as senior leaders within your organisation, what one thing can you do to enable collaboration within your organisation that then is going to hopefully enable us to work more collaboratively as a sector going forward? Rachel, can I start with you?
Oh. Well, I think we're in a good position at BSU because we're a very collaborative organisation. We're quite small and we're agile as well, which really helps. But I think the thing that really matters the most above all else is being personable, being available, talking to people, making that time to listen and also understand what their challenges are as well.
And we've seen that evidenced in certainly all the work that we've been doing with you. Martin?
I think we'd like to get to that point of being really collaborative internally, so I think that's really good, and I think JISC is helping us to make those connections. But then more widely, I think as a community, there's more we can do. Yeah, we kind of are in competition a bit, but there was really great talks a moment ago. I was really sold on the AV one, and then there was the integrations one from Goldsmith. So I think there were really good things we can also do as a community that I think that would be really beneficial. Internally, we need to break down a few barriers and start working a bit more effectively, and that's where I think the work's come in with JISC to understand what's happening inside our institution. But I mean, there's a lot of work we can do through UCISA, a lot of work we can do through the communities that develop from it as well. So I think there's real potential there for us to learn about how we can move things forwards.
Thank you. Paul?
Yeah, I think it's about, for me, being able to free up my colleagues and colleagues within Kent to be able to be innovative and have space for thought. I think one of the real challenges that we face is the day-to-day, the do more for less potentially, as we try and wrestle with the BAU. And you know, events like USI's Leadership Conference for me are really important to be able to take that time away to have those conversations with colleagues, to be able to look at some of the fantastic work that's going on and aspire to be there. But being able to give our colleagues that headroom, and that for me is about trying to design a model, a delivery model for our department with that reduced resource base that will allow us to work and free up those colleagues, whether that's through partnerships or whether that's just prioritisation of the types of things that we need to be focusing on.
It goes back to your earlier comment, Martin, about the ideas department.
Yes.
Thank you, Paul. Baba.
So I think for us, we have the people and the expertise that we need to solve the problems we have. But what we need to do is find a way to bring them together to be much more sort of efficient and address this problem much quickly without sort of having it in just one area. And I think that's something that we're beginning to see progress in. And hopefully in a few years, it'll be much better.
Thank you. And before I thank our panellists, and I think this is a conversation that could continue because there's so much richness there in the work that you've been doing. Talking about collaboration, all the materials that we developed were co-created with sector. We've got a senior leaders working group there, which you're very welcome to join. Obviously, we've had representation from USISA on that, as well as our other sector bodies. More importantly as well, if you want to hear more around the work that Baba has been leading, that Rachel has been leading at Bar Spa, and also the work of Chester, which were nominated last night as well for an award, please do join us at these events that we're running. It is about sharing best practice. It is about learning from each other. And our Demonstrating Digital Transformation events are a great opportunity for doing that. So please do join us at those. So lastly, I'd just like you to join me in thanking our panellists for coming today and sharing the work that they are doing. Thank you very much.